All right, and so this is kind of a repeat. We've seen this before. So time and place and the type of critter that we have are all key in defining a population. All right, next, reproductive potential. Definition of reproductive potential, please. Alina. Yep. So reproductive potential limits how fast the population can grow. And it kind of depends on what sort of critter that we're talking about. Different species have different measurements of reproductive potential. So underneath your vocab, we'll get that in a minute. Underneath your vocab, set it up a little data table. Reproductive potential. We need to have two little columns here. One's going to be high reproductive potential, one's going to be low. Critters that have high reproductive potential, they're going to be able to produce lots of offspring at one time. Let's just do that for just a second. Critters with high reproductive potential, they're going to produce lots of offspring at one time. So each reproductive event is going to have a lot of offspring to it. High reproductive potential individuals, they are sort of putting all of their energy in the front. So that's where all of their energy goes in order to create a whole lot of offspring. High reproductive potential, since they're producing a whole lot of offspring at one time, that's where their energy goes. It requires a lot of energy to reproduce. So they focus their energy just on that reproduction event. So there's lots of critters out there. Like you got a billion little fishies that are out there, which is great. The problem is that they're not all going to survive. Oops. Those little critters have to mature quickly and have to get to the point to where they're able to reproduce quickly. So there is a short generation time. The generations are short, and usually these type of critters are able to reproduce early in their life cycle. So we've got a lot of them, but they're not all going to survive. Environmental factors are going to take a big hit on them. So these critters have to mature early, and they have to be able to reproduce early. So there's going to be a short generation time, and they have to be able to reproduce early in their life cycle. Individuals with low reproductive potential, their energy doesn't go into creating a massive amount of offspring. Their energy is going to go into making sure the few offspring that they produce are going to make it. So low reproductive potential, few offspring at one time. So their energy goes into making sure of the survival of those few offspring requires a lot of energy to ensure survival. Requires a lot of energy to ensure survival. High reproductive individuals, they're putting all of their energy into making the offspring. Low reproductive individuals are putting all of their energy into making sure the offspring that they have make it. So these type of individuals are going to have a longer generation time. Generations are going to be longer. And for their life cycle, they have to go through a life cycle to where they mature before they can reproduce. Okay, we're going to give ourselves some examples of individuals and their reproductive potential. Does everybody have that? Okay, so back up on our vocab term. Some examples of different reproductive potentials for individuals. Tigers, about 15. A possum, 108. That's pretty high. And so this is within a lifetime. So within a lifetime, a tiger has the potential of producing somewhere around 15 offspring. Within a lifetime. Opossums have the potential of about a 108, so obviously that's an average. Wasp, 1,436 little wasps. Largemouth bass, 70,000. So when you go fishing, does it seem like there's 70,000 fish in a lake? No. Right, so they are high reproductive potential. So they're going to put their energy into producing a whole lot of offspring, but those offspring get wiped out pretty easily. In comparison, a human's reproductive potential, 30 offspring in a lifetime. Yeah. So that's kind of Nick Cannon-ish, right? No, that's the potential, you know, but yeah, right. Largemouth bass. The fish. So yeah, bass, like the fish. So yes, highlight the vocab term, box in our examples, and then box in your data table down there at the bottom with the same color highlighter. Pardon? That's a lot of fish, but they don't all make it. Yeah. Sure. And even environmental conditions, it gets really hot some summer, and then you lose oxygen in the lake, and so a whole bunch of them die out. So it just doesn't last very long. All right, exponential growth. Read for us the definition of exponential growth, please. Paige. Okay, so that means we don't have any environmental factors that are limiting the amount of individuals that are there. Unlimited food, unlimited space, unlimited amounts of place to get mates and reproduce and not have to worry about predators. So exponential growth is great, but it's not always realistic. Exponential growth is something that you usually see primary succession maybe in one of those situations, or when you have a new species that comes into an area that's not been there before. So it doesn't have a predator right now. Maybe there's a food source that's there that it doesn't have to compete for because nothing else is eating it. So it's going to show exponential growth at the beginning. We'll look at that in just a sec. Carrying capacity. Read carrying capacity for us, please. Andrew. All right, so carrying capacity is how many of that individual can that ecosystem reasonably carry. chances are that the carrying capacity is going to fluctuate a little bit. Might get a little bit higher, might get a little bit lower. But generally speaking, you'll be able to see a range at the very least, a number of individuals that are successful in that ecosystem. All right, so you have two graphs that you picked up. Kind of eyeball them. Think about our definition of exponential growth. And think about which one of those graphs might show exponential growth. Oh, okay, gotcha, because that has it on the label on there. So you got two graphs. One of them should be kind of like this. One of them should be kind of like this. Which one do you think shows unlimited exponential growth? Okay, so, and why? Why is this one showing exponential growth? Oh, yeah, so if you're mathy, then that's one of those functions or whatever, exponential function. Okay, yeah. So yes, the J-shaped graph, it's showing a huge increase in a relatively short amount of time. This is showing our exponential growth. On your graph, at the very top, because our graph needs a title anyway, go ahead and label it exponential growth of bacteria. Exponential growth of bacteria. Yep, so get yourself a second color highlighter. Highlight at least the title of your graph. Highlight exponential growth on your vocab. Bacteria go through a reproductive process that's called binary fission. And so binary means two. Fission means splitting apart. Fusion means putting it together. So you have a little bacteria cell. It does everything it needs to do in order to get ready to divide, makes copies of everything on the inside, forms a little cleavage furrow. Boop, you've got two bacteria cells. Binary fission. Then this guy matures and grows. This guy matures and grows. So you've got two that are maturing and growing, becoming a big bacteria. Then they both go through binary fission. Cleavage furrow, boop. So this one went boop, and then this one went boop. So how many do I have now? So now I have 4. And those 4 can go through binary fission. So that's kind of this part of our exponential growth graph, is it seems like it takes a little while to kind of get established and get going, but it's kind of like that, have you heard of the little, like, it's not really a riddle or anything like that, but they're like, well, do you want $1 million or do you want to start with 1 penny and we double it every day? Right. For a month or whatever it is, right? And it's supposed to, okay. So you all have phones. Take out your phone. Get to the calculator app on your phone. $0.01. Put in a 1. We're going to double it, so times 2. So the second day you have how many cents? Yep. And then the third day, the next 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 day. Then the next day. Then the next day. The next day. Then the next day. So that was what? 8 days, 6 days, 7 days? Can't remember. So that first week, you're like, you've got, a pocket full of pennies. Now we're up to 1,000 pennies. And so each day after that, you're doubling it. 2,000, 4,000, 8,000, Now we're getting to this part of the graph, the J part of the graph, where we're showing exponential growth. So let's say that's 11 days, 12, 13, 2 weeks, 65,536. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 3 weeks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 4 weeks. And there's 100 pennies in a dollar, right? So divide that by 100, 100,000, 10 million within a month. So you start with a penny, and you end up with $10 million. Same thing here. You start with 1 bacteria, you end up with 10 million bacteria. Exponential growth. All right, we read carrying capacity. Okay, so the second one was carrying capacity. Oops. And hang on. Listen to my melodious voice for just a moment. Oh, and in fact, we need to draw that in anyway, so let's take a look at the graph itself. So the graph itself has a whole bunch of little dots on it. Boopity boop, 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 boop. So don't do anything yet. Hang on just a second. Let me find where my marker's at. So here's the thing. If I were to connect these dots on this graph, this would be smooth, and then it would show it up, and then going down, and then up, and then down, and then up, and then down. Don't do that. I just want to show you that if we did this, then it would go up and down and up and down and up and down like that. Does that look similar to something that we've done in here not too long ago? Do you remember what? Well, that sounds good then. Yeah. Yes, the little bunny rabbits. So when we introduced environmental factors, then they didn't have the exponential growth where they took over the world. Then they started to get kind of tamped down, and they would grow up, and then it would get knocked down and grow up and then get knocked down. So that's showing that there are factors in the environment that are having an effect on that bunny population. Usually when we have a graph like this, we don't do the connect the dot things. Usually we show a line of best fit to show the overall trend. So I've got points that are up here, and I got points that are down there. So my trend line needs to go somewhere in between them to show, generally speaking, what's happening. This is the line that we want. So we follow these. And then instead of going up and down and up and down and up and down, we kind of show a general trend line. So go ahead and give a line of best fit. Draw in a trend line on your graph. But you just want to make it go somewhat between those points to show the overall trend. This part of the graph does not show carrying capacity. Kind of looks like a J. This part of the graph would represent the exponential growth. So you have a new bacteria that's present. You eat something, you get bacteria in there, and it's like, whoa, look at this place, this is great. It's going to multiply and divide. It's going to show exponential growth. But eventually, even with bacteria, it's going to run out of space. It's going to run out of food, supplies. Bacteria are living things, so they're going to produce waste. So if they produce waste, it's a poison for everything else around them, and they get poisoned by everybody else's waste. And so it's going to kind of tamp down that population. So the actual part of carrying capacity is showing for this ecosystem, this is what it can carry. Wherever it levels out, that is the carrying capacity of that ecosystem. So on our graph, grab a third color highlighter. Highlight carrying capacity. Then on your graph, show where the carrying capacity takes place, where that levels out, and then make yourself a note. This is where the population has reached its carrying capacity. So if it were a test question that were to ask, what is the carrying capacity of bacteria in this ecosystem, I'm going to look for where that line flattens out, and then carry it across and see what the number is. And once again, it's going to be, an average. An estimate, I guess, not an average. this is the area where the population has reached its carrying capacity. So this graph, my carrying capacity graph, I have it on the bottom. I laid it down flat. Just laid it flat, one piece of tape, folded it in, one piece of tape on the fold. And I'll show you the exponential graph in just a second. Carrying capacity graph. I laid it down, one piece of tape on the fold. Okay, then my exponential growth graph. Put it on the top, kind of laid it down. I taped that down really good, and then I just folded it over just so it didn't dangle out. So taped it down, folded it over, and then I put a piece of tape on the fold. Exponential graph, laid it on there, taped it down, folded it over, piece of tape on the fold. All right, we've got one last vocab term. A niche is the range of conditions required for an organism and or the type of resources an organism requires. Habitat is where a critter lives. A niche is more than that. A niche includes the habitat, but is also including the resources that it needs, including where to live and any other individuals that it needs to work with, any food, water sources, anything like that. So a niche, habitat does not equal niche. A habitat does not equal niche. It includes the niche, but it is not the same thing. A habitat and niche are not the same thing. A niche involves, besides habitat, resources that they need, the interactions with other critters, any abiotic needs, water, air, carbon dioxide, and it's also going to include that role of that critter within that ecosystem. Habitat does not equal niche. It includes their habitat, but it also includes the resources that are used, the interactions between critters, the abiotic needs, and the job or role of that species in that ecosystem.